I got a job at the Bookworm, and the Bookworm was the nexus of intellectual life in the city. It was a meeting place for foreigners and locals alike. It was a restaurant. It was a bar, a cafe, and an event space, all in one. And a bookshop, of course. There was a library. It was a library. You could rent books from there. I don't know if many people did, but there was nothing like it. And I have to give most of the credit to the boss at the time when I was there, Peter Goff. Also, former journalist, and then after the Bookworm closed, he went back into journalism. But he was idealistic in the way I think a lot of journalists are, and in this case, a lot of bookstore owners are, which is to say, he sort of always knew that as a business model, it wasn't going to work. But he was still determined to do it the right way, which is to give the city, to give the people a place to express themselves, to exchange ideas. And in that spirit, he organized, he didn't found this. The Bookworm was founded by someone else, but he was one of the early investors. But anyway, he was the central figure in the Bookworm Literary Festival for most of the years that it happened. And I was fortunate enough to be a coordinator of that festival, of the 9th, 10th, and basically the 9th and 10th editions, and then helped out with the 11th edition as well. I feel like that was, in some ways, those years, and I don't want to get these years incorrect. I believe that was 2017 and 18, maybe 2019. I apologize. The dates they blend together in my head, but that in a sense was the last hurrah of.
2019 was the last one.
Okay, then 16, 17. Or maybe the first. Maybe you have this information available. The 9th festival was what year? Was that 15 or 16?
When was the 10th anniversary? Was that 2018? So perhaps 9th was 2017. Yeah.
Anyway,
there are many. Yeah. But the Bookworm Literary Festival was more than an oasis in the desert, wasn't it? It was an absolute carnival in the desert.
it was the one event every year in March that would be guaranteed to draw people from every single part of the city. There would always be, so it would be 2.5, 3 weeks of 3 weekends. It extend 3 weekends, but 2 full weeks of events, literary and otherwise. There'd be music, there'd be panel discussions, book launches. Spittoon has done things there. There would always be, we would always invite the winner of that year's Australian National Slam Poetry Contest. Like that winner would always come and give a performance. That was always like one of the most popular shows. There'd always be a comedy, and then toward the end, I was doing pub quiz. Yeah, a carnival, a celebration. The model was a celebration of literature and ideas, and I think that second part of it, of ideas, is so important because there were so few places. In fact, I don't know any other place in Beijing that really gave all of its participants, and that's everybody on stage and everybody in the audience who got to ask questions, a platform to say whatever they wanted. Now, that got the Bookworm in trouble. We got fined for quote unquote fire code violations. Peter got asked to go to the police station for half a day, for a full day, for no reason, except for the kind of events they were holding. But by that time, they were such an institution, and they were so well known and so well respected because, the local government, the Sanlitun government, likes to promote the Bookworm as a symbol of what is possible in China, to kind of say to all the naysayers, well, hey, look, we still allow this independent bookstore to exist, right? But yet, whenever we tried to push the envelope, we'd get slapped on the wrist. Anyway, I don't want to talk too much about the about that dynamic, the politics of it. But I just thought Peter stayed very true, despite very difficult circumstances, to the ethos um, until the very end. And sadly, the bookworm closed in November 2019, and it hasn't come back. And it's dearly missed because no place has stepped up to the place.
Yeah, there's definitely there's like a bit of a vortex left, isn't there? Because uh, making an arts collective like Spittoon in Beijing, the Bookworm was always like a big brother or like an uncle, sort of, a kind of pillar to rely on, a sort of HQ, for activity. And it was almost, because there may be people that watch this podcast that can't visualize it, they've never been. It was like almost as if the building had fallen from the heavens and landed in Sanlitun, because it was a really beautiful building, and you have the sort of red lanterns that are illuminating it from the inside. And on the top of the rooftop, you look across Sanlitun, which is the commercial district of Beijing. You see the big Adidas building and all the shopping streets, and sort of center of commerce that is Sanlitun. Very, very trendy. And then you have the Bookworm Café, which is in the middle of it. So I think that really accurately sets the scene for the creativity that we shared or experienced during that time, before and after that time.
Well, Sanlitun, the bookworm and Sanlitun, the development of bookworm via Sanlitun tells an interesting story about Beijing as well. Because in the early days, that area of Sanlitun, just to let people know who might not live here, Sanlitun is the nightlife and entertainment center of Beijing. And it was very rowdy 10, 12, 14, 16 years ago. It was a place of degeneracy, even. Uh, and the bookworm was,
Dirt Street?
well, Dirty Bar Street.
Bar Street, yeah.
Dirty Bar Street doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. Well, we all call it Dirty Bar Street. Anyway, all of that got cleaned up. But the bookworm was, you used the word oasis earlier. It was a beacon of civility amid muck. But then suddenly it turned into something else. And you mentioned the Adidas building, and then eventually there was this gaudy hotel, the ICBC, the Intercontinental. I mean, sorry, not ICBC, Intercontinental, the IC, that got built. And Sanlitun turned into this symbol of Beijing wealth and glitz, of upper middle class, of luxury. And the bookworm still was an oasis, but then it was one of modesty, I suppose. It was a brick and mortar bookstore. How many of those still exist in the world? It's very interesting that it always sort of retained its own itself, its true essence. It never strayed from that, while everything around them sort of tried to find itself. But not even find itself, tried to find a way to be fashionable.
You've managed to encapsulate the development of Beijing very well in that analogy, because the city has developed so quickly and so fast over the last 20 years. And as you said, the bookworm was a kind of oasis of civility from the outset, but then as it became more commercialized, it became a kind of oasis of, how would you describe it? Sort of there's something quite maverick about it.
The bookworm always knew what it was.
Like a free stage, a bar.
Yeah, like it was always a bar, event space, and restaurant. It was always those things. It always had books inside, but it always knew what it was. And I feel like a lot of establishments here don't. And I feel like a lot of people here don't. And the longer one stays, I think the more one questions whether they really know themselves and whether they belong. Especially I'm talking about expats specifically, foreigners. And I feel that more and more these days, not just because of the pandemic and so many people leaving because of that, but just it seems like China has less and less need of foreigners, and therefore, what are we doing here?